The first thing she heard was the sound of the door locking from the inside. No footsteps, no voice, just that brutal final click, like a sentence being passed without trial. The room was cold, not from the night wind, but from something older. The stone walls sweated with silence. A single torch flickered against the far wall, as if afraid to burn too brightly, or as if mourning her already. Yrsa didn't cry. She sat still, her back straight, fingers wrapped around the edge of the wooden bench like they could anchor her to anything real. She remembered her mother's hand slipping from hers at the edge of the village. No tears, just a whispered command. Walk, don't look back. She didn't, not even when the cart creaked into motion, when the cold wind bit through her cloak, or when the path turned from earth to snow. The journey had taken 2 days, blindfolded, bound, and bundled like a gift, and in a way, she was one. A peace offering, or a warning. They called. Him the Wolf of the North, a warrior bred in war, said to have torn out a man's throat with his teeth. Children were raised on the tales, women whispered his name like a curse, and yet her clan, desperate to end a war that had claimed too many sons, gave him a girl in exchange for silence. Not just any girl. Her. She thought he would touch her. That was what they all said. That the wolf would consume her the moment the doors closed, rip her dress, press her into the fur-covered floors of his hall, take what was offered. But he hadn't. He only looked at her, a long look, pale eyes, too steady, too empty. And then he shut the door from the outside. Why? Why not even a word? The torch cracked behind her. The shadows moved. Yrsa stood and crossed the room slowly, her boots echoing over the stone. She tried the handle, locked. She pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. But beneath it, something. A breath? A heartbeat? Or maybe her own? Louder now than it should have been. The room wasn't bare. That was the second surprise. On the far wall, behind a rusted shield and a shattered helm, she saw a cloth draped over something long and flat. She pulled it away and gasped. A suit of armor. Not northern. Not even close. Its leather straps were laced with red dye, the same pattern worn by her own father's guard. On the chest, half covered by dried blood, was a faded sigil. A tree with roots wrapped around a serpent, her clan's crest. But torn, slashed through the middle by a blade. Why would he keep this? Her father had died in battle, that's what they'd told her, that the enemy cleaved through his chest and left him in the mud. She'd believed it. But if this armor was here, then someone had lied. Why? She turned, heart pounding now, and began to search. Behind barrels, beneath rugs, under the bench, a loose stone in the floor. She pried it open. Inside, folded tight like a secret, was a strip of parchment. 3 words, written in dark ink. Do not trust them. No name, no mark. Just the ink, smeared as if someone had written it in haste, or while bleeding. Yrsa backed away. The torch flickered again, throwing her shadow against the far wall like a warning. Its flame danced smaller, now barely clinging to life, done like her own sense of certainty. That was when she heard it. Not footsteps, breathing. But it wasn't him. Someone, or something, was on the other side of the wall. She pressed her hand to the stone, cold but vibrating. She crouched, ear close, listening. The breathing grew sharper, closer. A whisper scraped through the stone. You shouldn't be here. Yrsa stood, her breath caught in her throat. Who are you? She asked, her voice hoarse. No answer, just silence. Then retreating steps, slow, measured, gone. She stared at the wall long after the sound had faded. She wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But something had shifted. This was no offering chamber, no bridal cell. This was something else, a vault of memory perhaps, or shame, and she was inside it. She sat again. The torch was dying. The air had grown colder. She pulled her cloak tight, eyes fixed on the armor, her father's crest cut down the middle. It didn't make sense unless, Unless he wasn't her enemy, unless he wasn't their warrior at all. That was when she heard it again, from the door this time. Not the lock turning. A voice, deep, rough, ragged. "Don't move." Her breath stilled. She turned slowly, and through the crack beneath the door she saw a shadow fall. Seconds passed. Then a whisper through the crack of the door. "Are you alone?" She didn't answer. Her hands trembled, but she kept them hidden beneath her cloak. A breath, a pause. Then retreating footsteps. Gone again. The silence that followed wasn't clean. It carried weight, the kind of silence that had listened to things it wasn't supposed to. Yrsa sat back down, slower this time. Eyes on the door, ears on the walls. She didn't know what this place truly was, but it wasn't. Meant for a bride. By the time the morning light scraped through the lone window slit above her head, she noticed something different. The snow outside the narrow opening had thickened, nearly sealed the slit with frost. 3 days must have passed. That morning the lock clicked again, but no one entered. Instead, a tray slid under the door. Bread, dried meat, and water. She moved toward it slowly. A folded scrap of hide was tucked beneath the plate. She unfolded it with shaking. Hands inside. A name burned into the leather. Ragnar. Another girl. She looked around the stone chamber again, but now with sharper eyes. The carvings in the wall, she had assumed they were decorative, just old runes. But now, she read them. Not in the northern dialect, in hers. "I was 12. He let me run once. Don't scream." They listened for that. Ragnar was the last, I think. Yrsa's breath caught. There had been others. That night, she didn't sleep. She traced the walls with her fingertips whispering their names like a prayer for ghosts. She counted 12 different hands, some words hopeful, others broken. And just before dawn, she found it, a symbol scratched deeper than the rest. A wolf's head, upside down, bleeding from its eyes. On the third night he came back. No armor, no sword, just silence. His hair was loose, dark strands sticking to the sweat on his brow. There was blood on his knuckles, but none of it looked like his. He stood in the doorway staring at her. Then, without a word, he tossed a key across the floor. It clinked against the stone and spun like a coin. She didn't move. He waited, then turned and left. Why give her a key now? Was it mercy? A test? A trick? She didn't know. But the next night she used it. The lock turned easy. The wood moaned open. No guards. No war horns. Just snow. And silence. She walked barefoot down a narrow hall, pressing herself against the stone. Her breath fogged in the cold. She passed a torch, lit but low, casting shadows on the walls. Then a whisper. "Yrsa." She spun. No one. The whisper came again, closer. "Don't trust the red-haired one." A figure darted past at the end of the hall, too fast to see clearly. She ran after it, downstairs through an arch, into a chamber she didn't recognize. Inside, weapons, hundreds, some rusted, some clean, all from her clan's forge. She touched the hilt of one sword and recognized the shape, her father's sword. She had seen him sharpen it before his last battle. So why was it here? Unless he hadn't died in battle. Unless he'd been brought here too. She stared at it, and her stomach turned. If this was truly her father's, then everything her mother said had been a lie. She turned, heart racing. And there he was. The wolf. Watching her. No rage, no words, just something else in his face. Guilt. She held the sword between them like a shield. He didn't move, only said, "They told me. You'd come, but not like this. Witness." She lowered the sword, but only slightly. "Whose blood is that?" she asked, staring at his knuckles. He looked down as if surprised to see it. Then, "Yours. If I hadn't stopped them." She backed away, the blade rising again, but his voice came quieter now. "I didn't want this," he said. "I asked them not to choose you." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" choose. He looked away, and for the first time she saw it. He was ashamed. He turned, stepping back into the hall. "Follow me," he said. She didn't want to, but she did. Through the narrow corridor, past the upside-down wolf carved into the stone, down a spiral stair she hadn't seen before. The cold grew heavier, the air wetter, and then a door, older than the rest, sealed in rust and ice. He didn't knock. He unlocked it with a small bone key that hung from his neck. Inside, darkness. Then a single torch flared. She stepped in and gasped. There were maps, hundreds, covering the walls, the ceiling, the tables. Lines drawn in blood, symbols she couldn't read, but others she could. Her village, her forest, her mother's home, all marked, targeted, watched. He stood beside her. They were never after peace, he said. The treaty was a veil. What they want is what's buried beneath your lands. Yrsa turned to him. The iron. He nodded. But not just any iron. It's laced with something older, stronger. Your father called it the deep root. He swore it should never leave your clan soil. She felt dizzy. This war, it was never about vengeance. No, he said. It was about extraction. She stared at the maps, then at him. "Who are you?" she asked. He didn't answer right away, but his eyes softened. "I was born in your land," he said, "taken during the third raid, raised to hate your people, to forget my name." He touched the chain around his neck, not the key this time, but the small carved token beside it. A serpent coiled around a tree, her clan's crest. She stepped back, shaking her head. "No, you're lying." But something inside her already knew. He turned to the wall and pulled down a cloth. Behind it, an old cracked mirror. "I don't know who you see when you look at me," he said, "but I know who saw me last." Yrsa approached the mirror. Etched into the frame was a name. Alric, her uncle's name, her father's brother, presumed dead since the war began. "You're not him," she whispered. But the resemblance was undeniable. Older now, hardened, but still the same eyes. He stepped forward slowly. "I was meant to kill your father," he said. "They trained me for it, promised me truth in exchange for blood. But when I saw him..." His voice cracked. He dropped his sword, called me by name. I ran. Yrsa didn't realize she was crying until the tears hit her knuckles. All her life she'd believed in sides, borders, legends, but now everything bled together. She looked back at the maps. "At least tell me," she said. "What happened to Ragnar?" His jaw tightened. "She found this room too," he said. "And what was beneath it?" Yrsa blinked. "There's more?" He crossed the room, pried open a panel behind the largest map. A hidden stair, leading down. "Ragnar saw what they buried," he said, "and what they planned to use it for." Yrsa stared into the black beneath them, and for the first time, she felt the cold was coming from below. She took a step down, one more, then stopped. "What happened to her?" she asked. Again, he hesitated, then she screamed once, then never again. With black water. It smelled like rust and something sweet, like overripe fruit rotting beneath snow. Her fingers brushed the stone again, still warm. At the bottom of the stair was a chamber, round, low, carved into the bedrock itself, and at its center, something that shouldn't have existed. A tree, or what was left of one. Its roots were stone, but pulsed faintly with light. Its trunk was metallic, twisting veins of ore coiled in spirals, and across its branches hung runes, strung like bones. Some pulsed, others were cold. Yrsa stepped forward. The ground vibrated beneath her. A low hum, not mechanical, not natural, like a voice buried in the earth, murmuring beneath her thoughts. She reached toward the tree. Alric grabbed her wrist. "Not yet." His voice was raw. She turned to him. "What is this?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Your father called it the root, said it was older than the clans, older than the gods, that whoever controlled it would Never need swords again. Her throat tightened. And that's what they want? He nodded. They've been digging for years. Slowly, quietly, using the war as cover. She stared at the tree again. But this doesn't explain Ragnar. Alrik closed his eyes. She touched it. What happened? His jaw clenched. She changed. Before she could ask what that meant, a sound echoed down the stair behind them. Boots, steel, voices. Alrik pulled her behind a rock formation. 3 figures entered the chamber, cloaked, masked, armed. One of them, a red braid falling down her back. Yrsa whispered, "That's her. That's who the voice warned me about." Alrik nodded. "That's Siv. She leads the extractions." Siv walked to the tree without hesitation. She held up a blade, curved, dark, unnatural. Then she began to speak in a tongue Yrsa didn't recognize, harsh, rhythmic, like a chant. The runes on the branches flared red. The tree pulsed. Alrik pulled Yrsa back, whispering, "We need to leave. Now." But Yrsa stared at the tree, and then she saw it. A carving, faint, hidden beneath the twisting root veins. It was her name, etched into the core, not in runes, in her mother's hand. Her knees nearly buckled. "What is this?" she gasped. Alric's face turned grey. "She knew, your mother knew, that's why they offered you. They thought maybe the tree would respond to you, that it was in your blood." Yrsa stared at her name, burned into the oldest wood on earth. And she knew without knowing how that it was true. Behind them, Siv raised the black blade. She pressed it to the tree. The light in the roots flared brighter, then dimmed. The runes flickered. The tree screamed. Not aloud. Inside them. Yrsa fell to her knees. So did Alrik. The other masked men dropped as well, hands to ears, mouths open in pain. Only Siv stood tall and smiled. Yrsa's vision blurred, but she could still hear it. A voice, low, within the root, not words, just need. The tree was calling her. When she opened her eyes, she was alone. Alrik was gone. The chamber was empty. Siv had vanished. And the tree now glowed with steady light, its runes burning white, and in front of it lay a single object, a strip of cloth. Her mother's shawl, burned at the edges, marked in ash. She picked it up with shaking hands, turned it over, and on the inside, a symbol stitched in hidden thread. The wolf's head, not bleeding, not upside down, but crowned. Yrsa stared at it, her lips trembling. What did she do? The echo of the root trembled once more, this time warmer, welcoming. Above her, footsteps, Alric's voice. "Yrsa, come now, they know." She turned to run, but something in the tree called again. She looked back one last time and saw it, a shape behind the bark, a figure, a girl, her eyes open, frozen inside the root. What she saw in the fire changed everything. There was a girl in the tree, not imagined, not symbolic, real. Her skin was grey marble, her eyes open but unmoving, glassy and endless. She was suspended in the roots, as if the tree had grown around her body instead of soil, and somehow she was still warm. Yrsa stepped back. The cloth in her hands, her mother's burned shawl, slipped to the floor. Above her the stair echoed again. Boots, metal, orders. They were coming, but she couldn't leave. Not yet. Not before she knew. She stepped closer to the tree. Her fingers hovered near the frozen girl's face. "Ragnar," she whispered. The tree pulsed. Yrsa gasped. Not pain this time. Memory. It flooded her. Images not her own. Snow-covered halls, girls screaming behind locked doors, men in wolfskin masks, slicing veins into the tree's roots. And one man, her father, throwing down his sword, begging them to stop. She staggered back, clutching her chest. The tree had shown her. What it remembered, it was alive. And worse, aware. She turned to run. But a voice stopped her. Not. From behind. From within her. Low. Familiar. You are not just offered, Yrsa. You are born of oathbreakers. She clutched her ears, but the voice didn't stop. One line split in two. One child hidden, one sacrificed. You were the seed. Then silence. Real silence. The roots went dim. The warmth faded. The girl in the tree closed her eyes. Yrsa ran. She burst from the stairwell into the stone corridors above, breath ragged, blood rushing in her ears. Ulrich was nowhere. Only his blade, broken, left on the floor. Blood led toward the outer doors. She followed. Snow fell hard now, blinding, heavy. The gates to the outpost were open. Beyond them, the forest. She took one step outside and heard it. A howl, not of an animal, of a man. She turned and saw him. Ulrich, kneeling, surrounded. Siv stood in front of him, blade to his throat. The red braid over her shoulder fluttered in the wind like a banner of warning. Yrsa stepped forward, but something in her shifted. Not fear, not rage, resolve. She pulled the broken blade from the snow and walked toward them. Siv turned, smiled. "Little bride," she said mockingly. "Did you like the gift below?" Yrsa didn't answer. She raised the blade. Siv laughed. "Do you think you're the first to touch it? The first to be chosen?" Yrsa stared her down. "You were never chosen," she said. "You just wanted to survive longer than the rest." Siv's smile dropped. She moved fast, blade slicing through the air. But Yrsa moved faster. The broken sword met steel, sparks flew, blood sprayed. Ulrich surged up, tackling the masked guard behind him. Screams rose, chaos. But Yrsa and Siv stayed locked, one strike after another, steel and snow and breath, until finally Yrsa twisted, and Siv gasped. The blade had found its mark, straight through the red braid. Silence fell again. Siv dropped to her knees, eyes wide. She looked at Yrsa, not in anger, in recognition. "I saw your name," she whispered. "In the tree before mine, then fell." Yrsa stood over her, snow melting on her face. Ulrich limped to her side, blood running from his shoulder. "You weren't supposed to survive this," he said, half smiling. She looked at him. "I didn't," she whispered. They buried the fallen behind the outpost, marked only by the tree's shape carved into a stone. No names. Some stories, Yrsa realized, were safer buried. When spring came, she returned home. Ulrich disappeared into the mountains, a man, searching for a life he'd never been allowed to live. And Yrsa, she became something else, not a bride, not a daughter, not a tool for peace. She became a keeper of oaths. Every winter she walked the forest edge, tracing the old bloodlines, listening to the wind. It never spoke. But sometimes she dreamed of the tree, and in those dreams the girl opened her eyes and smiled, and on the stone, carved in silence, was her name.